Hi everyone! Today this video is going to walk us through an example with several of the do-while loops. Remember there are 3 different types of loops, and the do-while loop is where we want the loop to iterate at least one time before the loop ends. So this is considered a post-check loop. The syntax for the do-while loop is a little bit different than the do loop and the for loop. So we're going to do a program. And this program is going to do several different things. The first thing that it's going to do is it's going to prompt the user to input 2 integers. And because we're going to be doing odds and evens, we're going to actually tell them to enter in the first number that is smaller than the second number. The next thing we're going to do is once they enter in all of those numbers, we're going to output the odd numbers between those 2 numbers. Then we're going to output the sum of the even numbers between the 2 numbers. And then we're going to output the sum of the squares of the odd numbers. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create a little table. And in that table, it's going to have the numbers 1 through 10 in the first column. And then in the second column, it's going to have the numbers for the square of each of the numbers 1 through 10. So 1 times 1 is 1, 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 3 is 9, and so on. And then finally what we're going to do is we're going to output all of the uppercase letters. And all of these are going to be done with do-while loops. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. And I've already created my parent folder and I've created my program folder, and now I'm ready to create a new project. I'm going to verify that Visual C++ is selected. I'm going to verify that empty project is selected, and because I don't remember what I named my my program folder, I'm going to navigate to my desktop and I am going to find my week 11 chapter 5 examples, and I called it do-while. So I'm going to select that folder, and then I'm going to call this do-while as well. Click OK, let Visual Studio do its magic. Create my source file. Verify CPP is selected, and change source to do-while, CPP, add. And now I'm ready to start my program. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with element 1, which is the name it, data, claim it. Application name is doWhile.cpp. And the purpose, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to be smart. I'm going to come back over here to my Word documents. And I'm going to grab this, work smarter, not harder, and then I'm going to paste it here, and then we're ready to rock and roll. So, element 2. That is our preprocessors. So the preprocessors that we're going to use for this program are going to be IOStream, because we're going to have basic input and output, and we're going to do IO_manip, because we're going to build that table with the numbers 1 through 10 and the square of the numbers 1 through 10. And we're going to use setW for doing that. So that needs IO_manip. All right, then we've got element 3. Element 3 is the namespace, and that's using namespace, NAMESPAC. And then element 4, that's constants, if we have any, and in this program we don't. Element 5, initialize the main module. And that's int main, open curly brackets. Element 6 is declare the variables. so the local variables that we're going to use for this program. We're going to use an integer for the first number. We're going to use an integer for the second number. We're going to use an integer to calculate the sum of the even. We're going to use an integer for our counter for all of the loops. And we're going to use an integer for the sum of the squared odd. And we'll use that to calculate all of those together. And then finally, for that fourth, or that last part of the program, the A through the Z, we're going to set a character, and I'm going to call him CH counter. Element 7 says it's our executable code. With our inline comments. All right, so the first thing we're going to do is allow the user to input the two integers. First one smaller than the second. So we're going to do cout, and we're going to say enter two integers. And I'm going to do a little note. First number should be smaller than the second number. And that will end the prompts and the line. CN, we're going to bring the first one and put it in first number. And I'm going to bring the second one into second number. Cout and end the line. All right, next we're going to do is output all of the odd numbers. Between the first number and second number. All right, so the first thing I've got to do is determine if first number is odd or even. This is where we use the modulation. So we're going to look to see if the first number, when we modulate it by 2, is equal to 0. That means it has no remainders, and that means it is an even number. So if it's an even number, I don't want even numbers, so I'm going to take my counter, and I'm going to set my counter to equal the first number plus 1. Else, I'm going to take my counter and set it to the first number, because at that point it is an odd number. And I'm thinking counter. Yep, I know, I used the right name, counter. Counter. And is equal to 0. I don't know why that is giving me an ending. Oh, there we go. All right, so once we've got that done, now I'm able to output all the odd numbers. And we're going to do that with a loop. All right, so to do the do-while loop, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say cout the odd numbers between, I put the first number, concatenate it with and. The second number. And I'm going to concatenate that with r. And then we're going to do the loop. I'm just going to start with the do. And what are we going to do? Well, we're going to output the counter. Because the counter is actually holding the first odd number. And then I'm going to concatenate that with a space. And then I'm going to take my counter and I'm going to add 2 to it. And I'm going to do all of this while the counter is less than or equal to the second number. And then I'm going to see out and end the line, concatenate, and do 2 spaces. Because now I'm ready to go to the next part, which is output the sum of all even numbers between first number and second number. All right, first thing we've got to do is determine is first number odd or even. And again, that's where we're going to use the modulation. And we're going to look to see if first number, when I modulate it by 2, is equal to 0. If it is, we know that the number is even. So we'll use our counter again. And we're going to assign the counter the value that's in first number. Else, we're going to set the counter to equal what's in the first number plus 1 to take it to the next number up, which then would make it an even number. But it helps if you spell that right. Now that I know what my first number is, I can initialize for the loop, which is sum even. And I'm going to initialize it at 0, and then I start my loop. And what am I going to do with my loop? Well, I'm going to take sum even and assign it the value of sum even plus the counter. And then I'm going to take my counter and I'm going to make it go by 2. And we're going to do all of this while the counter is less than or equal to the second number. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to save that because that's 2 parts, actually 3 parts of the program now that are done. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to output the sum of the even numbers. Nope, we just did that. We are going to, actually do the output. So see out the sum of the even numbers between first number and second number is sum even. end the line. And I'm going to do 2 spaces and end the line. All right. Next, we're going to output the sum of the odds. All right, so now this is the one part of the program where we're going to go back and we're going to determine all of the odd numbers, and we're going to calculate the sum of the square of all of those odd numbers. And again, the first thing we've got to do is determine if first number is odd or even. So again, we do that with the if statement. First number modulated by 2 is equal to 0. That means it's even. So we're going to take our counter and we're going to assign it the value of first number plus 1. Else, we're going to take and assign the counter first number because it is odd. So now that we've got the odd and the even numbers in first number or in the counter, I can initialize loop variables, and that's sum square odd. And I'm going to initialize it at 0. And then I can do my loop. And again, it's going to be a do while loop. So I'm going to take sum square odd and assign it the math value that takes the sum of the square odd plus the counter multiplied by the counter. And then I'm going to take my counter and assign it if you can type 2. And then we're going to do all of this while the counter is less than or equal to second number. And finally, well, not finally, now we're going to build the table and output numbers 1 through 10 and the square of each number in column 2. After first I got to output. Forgot to do the output. So I'm going to take my output and I'm going to output the sum of the odd numbers, the sum of the square odd numbers between first number and second number is sum squared odd. And now I'm ready to build the table. All right, so to build the table, we are going to just do a C out real quick. And I'm going to do number, and then I'm going to do square of number. and end the line. And then I'm going to initialize the loop variables. To initialize the loop variables, I'm going to set my counter to equal 1 because I want it to be 1. And now I'm ready to do my loop. What's the first thing I'm going to do? I'm going to output the counter. And before I output the counter, I'm actually going to do a set W and move the first number in 4 spaces. And then output the counter. And then I'm going to use set W and move over 18 spaces. And I'm going to output the value of the counter multiplied by the counter. And then I'm going to take my counter and add 1 to it. And we're going to do all of this while counter is less than or equal to 10. And then I'm going to come out and of course I forgot my semicolon again at the end of this line. That should take away that. Do all of that while. And that goes there. All of that while counter is less than or equal to 10. Alright, so now that I've got that done, I'm going to do a cout. End the line, and end the line and give me 2 spaces. And then finally, we got capitalized letters A through Z. I need to initialize my character. And that's CH counter. And I'm going to initialize it at capital A. And then I'm going to start my loop. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to output the CH counter because it holds the A. And then I'm going to output a space. And then I'm going to take my CH counter and add 1 to it. Which will take me to B, then C, then D. And we're going to do all of this while my counter is less than or equal to Z. Out and the line. And finally, we are ready for element 8, which is pause the window. Element 9, which is end the module. And finally, our last and final curly brackets, which is element 10, and the program. And if we now save all of this, we should be able to run it. Give it a couple minutes. The numbers that I'm going to output are between 1 and 5. And I definitely have an infinite loop. Okay guys, so since I have this infinite loop, I'm going to pause the program real quick. I'm going to fix my problems and then I'll come back and I'll explain what I did. All right, after a little bit of research and some staring at the code, I realized that my counter here should not be counter, it should be CH counter. So if I take that and make that CH counter and not the number counter and save it, this time if I run it, it should work this time if I do 1 and 5, and sure enough. So outputs my numbers. The odd numbers between 1 and 5 are 1, 3, 5. The sum of the even numbers between 1 and 5 is 6. The sum of the squared odd numbers between 1 and 5 is 35. There is my table with my 1 through 10 with some space and the square of 1 through 10, and then again the alphabet A through Z. So hopefully that answers and gives you enough examples for a do-while loop. In the next video, I hope to do a for loop. I look forward to seeing you guys soon.